million Venezuelans voting for this assembly, saying it's actually less than 3.
It is. And people are going to start rioting in the streets.
Was reported to have asked Putin for military support that would help him stay in power.
We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
And they ignore him. And 8 more years goes by till Bernie himself finally admits to his sons, hey, I've been running a Ponzi scheme.
Does its dominance mean it can use the alliance for its own ends?
Since 1981, bond yields, also known as coupon rates, have just gone down and down and down.
The Federal Reserve note will be your biggest financial liability. RTD Live Talk, Wednesday, 13th day of the month of June. And it's time for another live stream. And so, as always, want to get your thoughts on the video earlier in regards to blockchain and the merger of artificial intelligence. I really believe that that will be a game-changing opportunity, because it's something that we are going to be impacted by, whether we like it or not. And so the whole idea of, a lot of people aren't too keen on the whole idea of the blockchain and crypto and artificial intelligence, but at the end of the day, there's no way around it, because it's already here and it will be a part of our lives in one way or another. So it'll be worth our while to find out more about it and to look for opportunities to get involved if those are things that we see as being game changers for the future. So as always, before I dive any further, give it a second before I begin chit-chatting. And so, as I allow more people to join us this evening, if you are a new viewer to RTD Live Talk, feel free to chime in the chat where you're tuning in from. Always love to find out who's joining us and where you're located at. And as always interested to find out what's happening in your world in regards to local news or whatnot, things that's relevant to what's going on with our financial and our monetary system. And so, as you can tell from today's title, we're talking about the Fed tightening into a recession. And so, as we all know, or if you haven't heard, I actually caught up on it late this evening, but Jerome Powell, current Federal Reserve Chairman, has decided, and the FOMC, Federal Open Market Committee, has decided to, we got Jose from Orlando, welcome my friend, decided to raise the interest rate, Fed funds rate, as well as a couple other different rates that I'm not too familiar with. But at the end of the day, I'm thinking like, okay, they're basically tightening right into a recession, and didn't have a chance to actually hear the follow-up that the Fed chairman usually gives after, policy implementation. But I got a good sense that one thing they probably did not cover or even talk about, because one of the things, just from what I heard about watching some of the mainstream news channels speak about it, it seemed like it was a very happy-go-lucky and very optimistic report or follow-up interview in regards to his optimistic viewpoint on where the economy is now and how everything seems to be going just fine. And all the data shows that the economy is strong and everything is improving. But, once again, that's all on the surface. But yet, if you look underneath, one thing that really stood out to me that I will definitely talk about in this stream tonight, but it's the idea that we are, according to the typical business cycle of about 6 to 8 years, 7 give or take, of a market correction in the form of a boom and bust type of ordeal, where we're currently in an expansion, but it's a monetary induced expansion that is being tightened right now. So basically, raising rates and easing the stimulus that's been injected to the economy for the last almost decade now will play a major role into this illusionary economy coming to an end in a very painful way. And I will actually go right into a graph that I wanted to share to kind of pinpoint what is something that was left out of the equation and what doesn't get much airplay. And so I'll actually see if I can zoom in on it a little better, because I want to make sure that, this is one part of the whole federal funds rate that no one really seems to be mentioning or talking about. and this is an older graph, but I'll pull up anyway. But one thing that really we should be paying attention to and be alarmed by, and be more so interested in than, as opposed to these rate hikes, is the fact that here we have just the effective federal funds rate, and we see just basically what has been an ongoing trend upward in the earlier part of the century until where we're at now, where ever since the whole inflationary environment we had in the late 70s and whatnot, where they jacked up the federal funds rate to astronomical rates to curve inflation, ever since that time frame there, everything has been trending downward. And what is most notable, and what I think is probably the most important, which no one seems to be mentioning, is these little gray lines that are on this chart spread throughout. And it's actually hard to see from this graph here, but let me see if I can find a better picture, because it's those gray lines that I believe is what we really should. Here's another chart. Let me see if I can grab this one, see if it's any better. So here you see the recession line. So every one of these big, thick, darker lines here are indicators of a recession. And so if you just happen to just look at the trends and look at the fluctuations in these rates, all these dips here are always in response to a market slowdown, or i.e. a recession. And so here we have the last recession, of course, is the Great Recession. And if you can see it, if you look at the thickness of all these recessionary lines, there are a few that goes back, according to when I guess this chart was being first charted. But apart from the 80s area, there's been nothing as thick as the one we had in 08-09, as well as just a time frame or length in between one. We're currently approaching the second longest, and I believe it's from the 1990-ish to the 2000, where the dot-com bust. So that's a 10 years or so economic expansion, of which we see what happened here, how the monetary policy response was during this time frame, where they were able to actually achieve what some economists and what has been considered the norm, which is around this 5% interest rate level. But yet ever since what happened in 08-09, we've entered into a new monetary realm that we've never seen. If you look at this chart, there's never been anything down here. And if you go even further back, when the Federal Reserve was, early first started off in that area there, you won't see anything like what we're seeing here. So I say all that to basically hint at the fact that the Federal Reserve right now, all this hype, all this information, all this excitement about, the Fed, they're tightening, they're easing, they're unloading their balance sheets, and, can we get another rate hike or two? I think that's all fool's gold, and it's very deceptive and deceiving. It's distracting us from what we really should be concerned about, and that, in my opinion, is the next time we see one of those thicker gray lines. And so let me see, I'm gonna pull up another picture, because the gray line still is not as dark as I would like for it to be. And so let me see, here we go. So here's another picture, effective funds rate. So these are just some generic graphs, but the emphasis I'm trying to point out here is these lines here, these big dark lines that go right through the middle. And of course, through every one of these lines, there's some type of dip. So there's an immediate slashing of the federal funds rate to try to bring things back into some type of monetary / financial stability order type of thing. But yet this line here, we haven't had one of these in almost approaching a decade now. And so that right there should be one of the things we should be most concerned about, is the idea that we haven't had a official recession in regards to them actually coming out and saying that's what, is actually happening. We've had more so the alternative media space using the alternative standards of measuring for recession, to where, most people would say we never fully recovered, because this is a papered over a 0% interest rate or -% interest rate, depending on what country you're in. But all the major markets, for the most part, all the developed nations are all somewhere near zero borderline. And so the point of this is we're tightening. If this line goes up, there's various factors that will impact the actual stability of a economic expansion, because as this line goes up, borrowing cost goes up, our abilities to pay off and pay the interest on our debt becomes more expensive. Then you have the banking situation, which will become a problem because as this rate goes up here, then that means that they're going to have to do some adjustments with interbank lending, which is this about, as well as depository interest rates on us depositing funds in banks. They're going to have to start kicking out some money now, ideally to, for holding our deposits. So I say all that to get to the point of the idea that regardless of what is happening, how many more interest rate hikes we get this year, next year, whatever, it's all boiling down to the fact that pretty soon there's going to be a big dark gray line that goes through here. And when that dark gray line comes, that's when we will then enter into an area where there'll be no more real wiggle room to be able to drop interest rates like in the past to promote stability in the markets and to freeze up the inflation that's going to take off and to just do all the typical things that's been done in the past to, i.e., help outcome a recession. So this drop here, we can see a drop here. We can see a drop here during this recession. We can see a drop here. So common sense, or maybe I could be wrong, but where would the next drop be if it's at 1.75 or 2% to basically get back to some type of stability or whatever it is they try to achieve when they drop these? So it's clearly good to say that this is going to drop well below 0.0 into negative territory. Now, the question would then be, what are some of the things that will impact us the most if we end up going negative, like it appears that we will end up going? So there will be major problems, a very uncomfortable tone in the whole financial sector. Starting here, of course, but then trickling out to the rest of the world. And so that is some things that I believe that this whole tightening in a rush. They're tightening in a rush to basically give them some wiggle room to be able to drop Fed funds rates, as well as to then issue what usually happens is some type of stimulus, a monetary injection. So that's where, we get into helicopter money, all the things that they're going to try to come up with. But that is the most important thing I think we really should be taking note of and paying attention to is what happens when that next dark bar line comes through. How long will that darker line, a recession line, be in comparison to prior recessions? And then how far will the Fed funds rate drop? So that is what more people should be concerned with, as opposed to whether or not the Fed is going to hike. Who cares? They've already proven that, it's been 8-10 years now of them trying to prop up our monetary system and economy. So now it's more so focusing on what's going to happen when those two things become obvious. A, recession, and B, it goes below zero. So I say all that to basically welcome everybody in who's going to be tuning in. I'll get to some questions here, but as always, the phone lines are open. Feel free to call in, chime in, share your thoughts. Let me know about your thoughts. And are the 2 points I made, are they valid? Are they things that more people should become more aware of? Or am I just being a doom and gloom type of person, which I don't think I have been in the past, but I consider myself more of a realist in the idea that those two things are more important really than the Fed rate and hiking rates, because now it's about preparation for the next recession and the life thereafter, and everything is going to come from that in the form of monetary policy, which will be once again policy that we could have never imagined they would be throwing our way. But anyway, so let me get to some questions here. It says a lot of bread will be $100 soon. A loaf of bread will be $100 soon. Yeah, save that money. Good evening. Enjoying the podcast. The Fed is stuck. 0.25 supposed to be a hike. This estimate, its economy is fake, and NASDAQ is getting to convert over to cryptocurrency. It's about to bust soon. Yeah, so that plays into the whole idea that, as the Fed is doing what they're doing, they're keeping the financial news as attention. But on the other end, behind the scenes, you have the whole crypto movement taking place and how it's being accepted by a variety of financial institutions, and there's a lot of things being prepared for that. I wonder, is there any correlation between the old system dying out, which is a Fed-induced monetary system, in comparison to this new alternative that's being positioned? And so that's gonna be interesting to see how this all plays out, man. I really do think it's gonna be things we should all keep an eye on. It says an ounce of silver will fill your grocery cart. Ounce of silver. James, an ounce of silver right now or in the future will fill your grocery cart. I believe it's more so it's going to fill it in the future, depending on the prices. And then that leads to another question I want to get to that someone left in the comment section in regards to a statement made by Cliff High. And I'll actually pull it up in a second. And it has something to do with the idea that he says that the crypto, according to, what he believes and his data shows and his perspective is that cryptos will soar because inflation will be, I guess, pretty high as well. And so that will play into those large figures that have been thrown out about what's coming at the end of the year and down the line with, all these large crypto nominal price valuations. So with that being the case, if inflation is high, which I do see that being the case, all that is going to do basically is absorb those cryptos, just like metals, will absorb all of those nominal / hyperinflationary type of digits that we brought into existence. And it's going to boil down to more so what can all that purchase. And so because there's a finite amount of goods and services, and there will be an unlimited supply of monetary units, i.e. Federal Reserve notes, it'll be a matter of being able to get your hands on some things that you can actually utilize and that, assets that can weather the storm through and until we arrive at a new, more stable monetary environment, which will come after all this stuff unravels. So that's kind of sort of an answer to that. Definitely, I do believe that inflation will be sky high, reflecting in the nominal price of the cryptocurrencies. It says, remember '08? I remember that day. Q Savage, that's a very good point. A lot of people forgot about the Great Recession and just some of the pain that a lot of people experienced during that time, i.e. homeowners, as well as those in the financial markets having their portfolios cut drastically. Those are just two things there. But yet this next time, depending on how long that recession, that dark figure on the Fed funds rate, that chart, depending on how long and thick that boy is, can determine it could be a lot more painful, because that 0809, according to what the Fed has on that chart there, it's kind of thick in comparison to prior ones. So yeah, we'll see. Said mortgages are underwater. The banks use shadow brokers to lend out money to subpar credit. These using strong loan sharks because they are not regulated by the same laws. I do believe that. That's the thing. There's so many backdoor ways of how this system is being held together, man. It'd be impossible to count them all. So that's an interesting stat. And yeah, so I'm interested to find out if anybody also had a chance to watch the interview I had with Anthony LaCavera in regards to, just the new company and what they're doing in the blockchain and crypto space. Because I believe that, I had a great conversation with him, on camera as well as off. And, from what they have brewing, I'm thinking like, man, it's going to be some exciting things as far as some of the developments and opportunities that will come from just the blockchain. Like the blockchain, as he said, it's the fourth. He said it's the fourth evolution of technology for the most part. First we had just the internet or dial-up internet. Then we had just internet in general. Then we had, I think what's the second one? We got, I'm losing my thought. Blockchain is the fourth one. Third one, I believe, is the internet. The second one, I can't think of it now. But anyway, the fourth revolution of blockchain being what's in season now and what will be in season pretty soon. And to think about what has transpired prior to with just the internet, how the internet has revolutionized our lives, how it's a part of our lives on a daily basis. We're talking right now. I'm talking to you guys right now because of the internet. And there's no telling what will happen, when the internet and all these websites, programs, companies transfer to the blockchain and utilize that as an open source, private type of system that's not regulated and controlled in this net neutrality type of stuff. So yeah, we'll see how that all goes. But definitely a great interview if you guys have a chance to check it out. And yeah, so it was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. It says, what's China play in the crypto right now? Good point there, Q Savage. So what's China? I've heard several different things from the media. Some say that behind the scenes they're working on their own crypto, blockchain, yuan, gold type of situation to probably position internally, domestically for their almost 1 billion people, whatever it is. And then there'll probably be an international one tied in with the yuan futures, gold redeemability type of aspect. And then I think, and here's one thing that really doesn't get much airplay as a whole, the Shanghai cooperation ordeal. Shanghai, the SCO, as well as just the Belt and Road Initiative, all those institutions, organizations is up and running. I'm pretty confident to say, and I could be wrong, this is my opinion, I believe that in the next decade or further down the line, there will be no need and usage of fiat-based currencies. Just because if you have the Belt and Road Initiative looking to join those countries in international trade and commerce, they're probably going to end up removing the borders in regards to having free travel in those regions eventually, to where it'll be somewhat of a pain in the butt to have to always convert currencies and different monetary units and stuff like that. Even if like Azerbaijan and Russia and China and Iran and all those nations in that area, that union, it's going to be a pain in the butt to have to utilize different currencies. So I can see a unified one belt, one road coin or something of that nature that will be a pool of commodities in a sense that will carry certain weight in their baskets to equal a somewhat stable, centralized currency that'll be under the control of a joint block of all 7, 8, 9, 10 nations. They all have a percentage or equity in the total valuation of the coin, and therefore, so it won't be centralized to just one country. But those are awesome things that they can play out in the hereafter, to where that answers the question of how China could be playing into the crypto sector, because they're not doing all of these bilateral swaps, all of these agreements and currency swaps, for the idea of continuing to use currencies, physical currencies, in the long run. So say all that to say that there will be a unified coin utilized in that area, just like there might be something utilized in our continent between Mexico, China, whatever. So those are all the plans that lead, so the goal is basically to minimize to minimize the need for as many national sovereign currencies as possible, and dwindle it down to regions like they have the EU. That's all those countries under one currency. That's the part that's plan one. Then you're going to get the One Belt, One Road Union right outside the EU to then come up with their own coin that whatever. The continent of Africa may have its own coin. Our continent may have, so you'll probably end up with maybe just 7 dominant coins, papers, whatever, for the next 100 years, 50, 60 years, whatever. But then, as you guys are aware, the goal is to have one centralized coin or currency that everyone must trade with, and then that could be down the line. So we're looking at 50, 60, 70 years, depending on what happens in regards to our borders, because, the goal is always to open up the borders, to unify us as a people under one government. That's what it's all about. So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent as always. It says, we love the blockchain. We don't like cryptos, said Johnny. Yeah, so that's one thing that Anthony mentioned, that, the whole idea of the blockchain is the foundation that the cryptos have been built on top of. We've been introduced to cryptos first as a way of just bringing in all the additional information utilizing the blockchain. And so the blockchain conversation has now taken on a life of its own, because every financial institution is looking into it. It's good to say, I'm not sure, I haven't saw this anywhere, but it's good to say that every financial institution is looking to take advantage of the opportunity of getting involved with the blockchain, A, to cut costs, as well as to then B, get involved in the sector and find a way to open up a new avenue of revenue for themselves, whether it be through some type of coin or whatever. And I really believe that every too big to fail bank, it's my opinion, will come out with a coin, and they will end up using that coin and offering it to their depositors down the line. If there's some type of bail-in and their Federal Reserve capital is frozen and used to recapitalize the banks, it's kind of obvious, and it's written in the what's that document? The Dodd-Frank Act, that there will be a recapitalization of the banks so that they remain solvent and business still. And then the depositors, depending on what tier you fall in, you'll get equity or stock into the bank as a form of your deposit. And I believe that equity or whatever you get as a shareholder of that bank would be in the form of some coin. So it just seems very convenient that they can issue you a coin or a token that they control, that's under their system, that's on their blockchain. Don't that sound like that might be something that would just be very handy and profitable for the banks? And so people get shafted on their Federal Reserve notes, but then you get a coin. I.e., and this is just me talking, you get a Wells Fargo coin, you get a JP Morgan Chase coin, you get a, whatever else. I can't think of any other too big to fail banks, but you know them. But you'll get their coin, and then with your phone or your watch, you could just scan it. You go to the grocery store, boop, 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 and then you're doing business. I believe that's where this is all heading. And then I like Ace One, good call there. The fact that he mentioned the 1988 Economist magazine is playing out before our very eyes. So another great way to get this party started for real. And so we're here in 2018, and on that picture, I'll actually pull it up because a lot of people might be like, what is he talking about? It's the Economist cover that has the picture of a bird or phoenix with a coin around its neck. And the coin, let me pull this up. See, the problem is nowadays there's been so many of these. It's so many. Trying to find some actual decent artwork to show that's not all butchered and yeah. So here we go. I'll use this. So it's this picture right here. The Economist says, "Get ready for a world currency," and it actually was published. I actually found the actual magazine, a PDF or whatever other magazine a while ago, and actually thumbed through it and actually read through some of the article that this was referring to. But you have the 2018. This was written back in the 80s, I believe, 87-ish, 1988. Yep, I'm sorry, 1988. So basically, 30 years ago. And it was saying that this year, it says 10 Phoenix. So it has, people reading into all types of things. But what stands out the most is the idea that it's sitting on burning currencies. And they go dollar or Federal Reserve note. We got some type of Asian currency and whatever else down here. And so the Economist, for those that are not aware, it's like one of the longest financial publications that's been in business, and they always seem to have the inside track because it's probably information. It's own whoever owns it definitely is a part of the whole. They are the ones that kind of make decisions for the world. And so I want to say it's probably, and I could be wrong, a Rockefeller or a Rothschild owned entity, but they end up, publishing some interesting things that end up coming true down the line. So they actually are basically, these are probably like little signals telling us of things that we should be aware of. So that's the cover that we're referring to there. And it's definitely something that, could be the case right now, just because we are in 2018 and blockchain cryptocurrency is mainstream news right now. So it could be the case. It could be the case altogether. And then we'll see what happens when we get out of 2018, because I believe that the end of this year, so we're halfway through this year now, I believe there will be a lot of turbulence in the markets in the rest of this year due to what the Fed is doing now, because by them hiking interest rates, that just makes it very tough for all the emerging markets that borrowed, dollars over the last decade at 0% interest rates. It makes their borrowing costs that much more expensive to pay back. So hence the idea that all these countries are already low on dollars in their reserves and their bills are going up on them. Hence the idea of more market turmoil in other countries that only will trickle out and, make its way up towards our continent. So yeah, that's it. So it says, get out of Philip Scott, get out of America. Yeah, and that's one of the things that, prior guests of mine, Leo Gantz, mentioned that, for those that have the means, it'd be worthwhile to look at becoming an expat. But the question would then be, and what I really thought about, is what area will not be impacted by some type of financial economic downturn, because every country, for the most part, is interconnected with the United States of America. And so once we have hiccups here, that's going to just impact everybody else's economy, import, export, financial markets, because wherever the Dow, the NASDAQ goes, so does the world. So it's good to say that, and I was always a fan of the idea of Central America area, just because it's not too far from America, but yet it's not completely, depending on what country, depending on where you're at, it's not, well, it is third world for the most part. But especially seeing what's happening in Nicaragua, because prior to this time period right now, I was always told, and I've actually saw a lot of videos and hear about how much of a nice and a peaceful country it is, even though it's, below the poverty line. But yet right now it's like, you can't go, or you should not go, or don't want to go to Nicaragua, because they basically reached a point of just lawlessness, where the police, when I read some news reports and saw some videos where the police is not on the streets now. Like, it's that bad because cartels have come in there, and there's a lot of just crime now against the public. And then you have all these gangs now becoming their own law enforcement, to where law and order is gone in that country. So as a foreigner living there, you are at the mercy of not knowing and not being nowhere near safety, to where it could be a problem. So the question will be that where could you go where there won't be chaos? And that's where it's like, okay, it's hard to even pinpoint that. So I think the idea of running or looking to get away from probably won't be ideal. But that's just my opinion. It says there are contracting jobs for the government outside the USA. Yeah, and so Philip, that's a great point. I'm sure there are opportunities, but yet those contracting jobs are ideally for skilled individuals that are able to produce and value in regards to whatever they might be, engineering, whatever they may be hiring for, of which if you have that, definitely that would be a good opportunity. It says the Central Americans are violent, no disrespect. It says, I think Trinidad had 3 murders last year. Really? Gang will take over just like gangs in Chicago. Andrew P. Yeah. It says, remember Bundy Ranch, be ready to defend your property. Yeah. They are violent because of American need for drugs. Yeah, man, and that's some serious talk there. That's stuff that you should definitely be paying attention to. But in regards to the question on the Fed tightening, I want to get back to the recession. Because one thing, as you've noticed, and you probably have noticed a trend, it's hard for me to get away from that topic, because I believe that the word recession will, in the history books, years and years from now, looking back, we're going to be wondering or asking, or the young next generation going to be saying, man, how could they have lived? How could they have been so naive and so stupid to not see all that coming? You know how you look back. Now we saw what happened with the Great Recession. More people's awake now and able to actually discern and say, man, that was okay. I see how that was rough. Now you can look back now and say, dang, I saw that. Okay, I can see how that was developing. That was just bound to happen. And so that's hindsight now. But so now here we are, 5-10 years from now, we're gonna look back this time and say, man, how could we have not saw that? And so this is where this is all playing at, the idea that there's no way of getting around the idea that, this whole facade of expansion and using the word expansion and recovery are all just mainstream propaganda. I mean, clear as day. What really, really gets me is this whole idea of a 3.8 jobs report, unemployment rate, it's at an all-time low, and then you factor in at what point do they mention that there's more people now out of the workforce than ever before? And then you even look at the jobs numbers that they give us, saying there was 200,000 jobs added this month, but you're talking about 200,000 jobs out of 300 million people, and almost 100 million people are not lawfully employed or righteously employed or part-time or whatever the categories are for being on our list. And so I'm thinking you talk about 200,000 jobs, but then I heard even further from a alternative media economist saying that, those jobs that they're referring to don't take into fact some other factor that he mentioned, which chops that in half. And so so basically that jobs report number was all fudged. On top of that, even the measurements for coming up with that number was faulty. So I'm like, man, we getting faulty numbers all the way around. But yet most people don't bother to question anything, or they go with whatever they hear. It says, audit the Fed. Yeah, audit the Fed would be something worthwhile. But yeah, here's the thing. When you audit the Fed, I believe that it probably goes so deep that they don't even keep record no more. I would imagine that because if they have the ability to print and to click a button and to transfer digits, because clearly everyone knows that since the whole, QE, since we started tightening QE ourselves, there's been other hiccups in the developed nations as well as in emerging markets that's received some funds from us that I'm hearing about, like, so they sending money any way they want, any way they how, just through the computer system. So I don't even think there's no way of really auditing what their books are, because they may not, they be honest with you, because they control our monetary system. And apart from them supposing to be transparent and open to us when need be, they don't really have to keep note tracks, because hell, who the hell gonna stop them? They are independent of the government. So, even if we get pissed at them, we have to veto the charter. And so the idea of the charter, which, I think I did a video a couple years ago when the 100-year anniversary. So back in 2013, 14, I did a video saying that it was 100 years of the Fed. And I want to say a couple decades ago, they actually had it altered to where there was no need to even address the need of renewing their charter, the central banking charter. So they are pretty deep in this game to where I don't think we will be able to audit them like, it would be ideal. And on top of that, the numbers we might find will probably blow our mind anyway. It says these globalists and too many corrupt politicians are in on this collapse. It's been planned. It says, are we going to repeat the 30s? Back then, everything was going to great, and all of a sudden, bam. Yeah. And that has to do with that, the thickness, which is the longevity of this next economic downturn, which I think in the very beginning or the midst of it, we're going to go from the word recession, and it's going to become a global contagion of just collapse of all types of markets, which is going to end up impacting all the currencies, to where we're going to go from the word recession to financial downturn, and to like one of my prior guests, he said it's going to be the greatest depression in human history, or something like that. Basically saying that it's going to be 10 times worse than the Great Depression, and something like we could have never imagined in regards to a new category of a depression. And that is like just trying to think about like how do you get it blows my mind, to be honest with you, like of how bad things can really get. And so but it is what it is. Excuse me. It says using 1980s calculators, inflation is over 10% and unemployment is at 12. Very true, James. Very true. But if you even take it even deeper, if you follow what's his name, John Williams from Shadow Stats, according to his data, he's another statistician guy, and his numbers says that inflation is much higher than 10%, and that his unemployment is in like 20% or something like that. Because factoring in the idea that there's so many people out of the workforce. He says, if I owe you money, show me the books. Right. So now what they're saying, we will starve. Nothing until we starve. Yeah, that's usually how it all plays out. And so I actually had a great conversation today, of which I have another interview I'm posting, which, it was another great interview once again. And it's from Daniel Lacaille, a economist and a professor, PhD guy, wrote a book. And so I had him on today, and it was a very good talk, man, because he kept it real, and it was very informative. So give you guys a heads up, that'll be coming this weekend. But I'm gonna break it up into probably clips and pull out clips, because there was so much knowledge in there, man. It was just But he talked about, at the end of the day, where this is all heading, and we talked a lot about Argentina and Venezuela, and he was able to give me some true economist type of terms and break it down in a way where it's like, okay, man, he made it kind of obvious of what's coming to Argentina in comparison to how Venezuela's playing out. And then basically from what I gathered from him, I was able to say basically, so what you're saying is that at the end of the day, all the government's going to fall into the same category because of a debt-based monetary system. And he, basically like, yeah, I mean, it's inevitable that that's how it's all going to play out, because we're all under the same system and it's all doomed. It's we're past the point of making a correction or fixing anything, because it's just too much debt. Our currency's debt. Our lifestyle is financed by debt. We've held the air we breathe. It seems like it might be saturated with debt. So it's like this is some serious stuff out here where debt is really a major issue, and it's really an issue when there's no way of ever repaying it back. So when you can't repay something back, what's the next option? You just don't, you default, like governments have always done, like governments are doing now, like consumers do when they just tapped out. And so yeah, that's what's real talk. That's happening, man. But anyway, so we've passed our 30-minute segment. I haven't received a call this evening, and so I take it that we don't have anybody out there that want to talk live. So we're gonna wrap it up, and it's been great as always. Thank you guys for tuning in, and as always, want to give you some ways that you guys can get involved. Here we got the webinar, putting that together, and I'm really more ideas. The problem is more ideas keep coming. It's like, man, this thing could mess around and be a whole damn seminar, workshop type of stuff that come across my mind. RTD University, make sure you guys check that out if you're new to RTD, get informed. Also, want to bring you guys attention to the Shocked by Circumstance T-Shirt, looking to help spread the message. So if you guys are interested, want to support the channel, and then also I'm doing the Patreon as well. So if you guys want to be a blessing and help me to further this message and put more time into this, I could definitely use some support and some contributors to the work here, because I would love to just be able to do this more often. But of course, got to pay the bills. So anyway, what else? So if no one else has anything else on their mind, we're going to call it a night, and I'll see you guys next week. There'll be some videos out tomorrow and some, this weekend, as I mentioned that video. But anyway, everybody enjoy your evening. Thanks for tuning in. Be good. And definitely, if you find us informative, make sure you give me a thumbs up before you check off. I see you already got 1 thumbs down. Appreciate you for that. That's from the heart, I believe. And then share this information if you find it, formative, and people need to hear about this stuff, because, there's no way of avoiding it. You're gonna be confronted with the recession pretty soon, or the downsides of that. So might as well start talking about it now and hopefully wake up a few people before it's too late. So anyway, enjoy your night, be safe, and I'll talk to you later.